Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. Now, these guys are a very well established and very well respected brewery in their local area, and they're from an area that is very well known for its craft beer, somewhere that I'd really love to visit in fact, but I just haven't managed to find the time yet. But from what I can gather, this brewery has really made its name from doing some top class New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, and a lot of people have been telling me for years that this is a brewery I really need to check out. So I'm glad that we're finally able to make that happen here on the channel. So the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is a style that I've heard they can do very well. It's a style that I really quite enjoy, quite a popular style at the moment of course, and this one is one of their core range beers from what I can understand, and a lot of people have told me this is a really good one. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to America like I said. We're going to go to the northeast of the country, the New England region, the state of Maine, and the city of Portland to be precise, and that means we're going to have a look at my first beer from Bissell Brothers Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Swish. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is yet another beer that I picked up at the wonderful Kiosk in Copenhagen, one of my favourite beer shops in the city and also the world, I would say. They've always got a great selection of stuff. They get some really interesting American things and stuff from further afield as well. But Bissell Brothers, as I say, is a brewery that's been recommended to me by quite a few people on my New England brewed reviews that I've done on the channel over the years, and finally I came across one of their cans when I was in Copenhagen a couple of weeks back, so I had to buy this one and get a review up for you guys here on the channel. They had a couple of beers actually from Bissell Brothers, and this one I just liked the name of. I think it was 3 or so, but yeah, when it comes down to trying a brewery you don't really know, you're either going to pick it for the artwork or for the name or something like that, and the name Swish, it reminded me of the Swedish phone payment system that I used very often. So yeah, that was the reason for picking this one. But one of their core range beers, I think it will make for a very nice introduction to the brewery. So let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. The Swish, a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Bissell Brothers Brewing Company in Portland, Maine in New England in the northeastern US. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the links to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Bissell Brothers Brewing Company. Very first time I'm trying one of the beers, as I mentioned earlier on, but hopefully not the last. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to very regularly of course, because we do get a bunch of American beers here in Hong Kong, and I'm also bringing them in from other places as well. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from different countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Bissell Brothers for the very first time then. And I will apologise if I mix up Portland and Maine with Portland and Oregon. I made that mistake on an earlier take on this video and had to do it again. But yeah, that's just kind of how it goes. There's quite a few Portlands in America from what I remember. But anyway, on to my brewery notes then. So, Bissell Brothers Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, is based in Portland in Maine, and the company was founded back in 2013 by brothers Noah and Peter Bissell, whom the company of course takes its name from. So the two brothers are originally from a small town called Milo in the middle of the state, and Peter originally studied communications and worked as a commercial photographer, running his own studio for a period of time too. Noah apparently discovered craft beer in his brother's apartment, and he began homebrewing back in around 20 2010 during his university days, during which time he also worked in a number of Portland bars. But toward the end of his studies, he shifted to studying fermentation and yeast science, all the while brewing his own beer and getting things ready to form his own brewery. So about 6 months prior to graduating, Noah decided that he wanted to make brewing his living rather than face the kind of mad job rat race that was going on at the time. But Peter found himself interested in entrepreneurship and marketing, and so together they started planning their own brewery and creating their own family business. So they found a premises on Industrial Way in the northwestern part of Poland, which incidentally is home to a number of breweries like Allagash, who are very, very good, you know, one of the kind of classic Maine breweries, if I'm not mistaken, so go and check those guys out as well. But they produced their first beers in this place, and they were released in December of 2013. The first beer was called the Substance Ale. They still do that today, and it was sold at the Thirsty Pig bar for the first time, which is where both brothers had been working during the planning stage of the company. But the following year in 2014, they released their first cans, and they opened a tap room at the brewery while also expanding the brewery's capacity and taking over other units within the building. This, however, only proved to be a kind of stopgap solution for them and their expansion, and they found a new site on the waterfront at Thompson's Point. So the building that they're now located in is over 100 years old. It was once a rail car repair building, and it was renovated and converted into their new brewery and tap room, opening in June of 2016. But over the following years, they continued to develop new recipes, and then in 2023, they leased the space of the former Rosemount Market and Wine Bar, which was right next door, if I'm not mistaken, and this allowed them to expand their kitchen capacity and dining space and also install a new bar. They also had a location in the brothers' hometown of Milo, which opened in 2018, but this unfortunately closed in 2024. But like I say, over the years, these guys have built a very, very good name for themselves. They're known primarily for their New England Hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but they have done a number of other styles as well. And as of October 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 160 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Bissell Brothers Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can also check out the Untappd page as well to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So the artwork on this one is of course pretty simple. It's just, you know, the brewery symbol on the front there, Bissell Brothers Brewing, so that's kind of what they've got there. It reminds me a little bit of, like, I don't know if it's meant to be like a knuckle duster with a, you know, triangle inside it. I thought that was kind of quite funny as well, not sure. But there you can see on the side, Swish. And yeah, like I said to you earlier, this one comes in at 8% ABV, New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. The hops in this one are Citra, Mosaic and Simcoe. We know all of these hops quite well. All three are American. Citra's about 14% alpha acid. It's going to give you a lovely big juicy kind of mango note with a little bit of a lemon limey character. Mosaic is 14% alpha acid. It's got that little touch of earthiness in its green component. Big tangerine characters though. And Simcoe is 12% alpha acid. I find Simcoe to be very sort of passion fruity and very soft. One of the interesting things about Bissell Brothers, and this beer, I can only say for this beer in particular, I'm not 100% sure, but these guys like to use a lot of Maine grown grains and Maine malted grains in their beers. I think, you know, this one is labelled as 100% Maine grown grain in this one. So yeah, the oats, the wheat and the barley they'll be using in this one will all be from the state of Maine, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else to talk about in terms of the ingredients and things in the beer. The only other thing I can point out to you is that these cans seem to be like custom made for the brewery, which is kind of cool. There you can see it's got an actual ring pull for Bissell Brothers Brewing Company as well. It's even got that symbol on it there. But yeah, looks really nice, this one. You can see the Danish import pant thing on the side there too, which is great. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we get from this one. Bissell Brothers Brewing, Swish. Really very curious about this beer. 1 American pint, this one incidentally, 473 millilitres. If I can get my finger under the can, under the ring pull there we go. Got it. That was a bit difficult actually, but there we are. So let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what we have. A beer I've been wanting to try for quite some time. So I think for the moment we've got maybe about 60% of the beer out and into the glass. That should be enough for us to take a look at this one. So yeah, anyway, with what we've brought out, you can see there's about just over a half finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head on this one. It's got a slight off-white kind of character to it, but you can see lovely kind of, yeah, lovely sort of medium-sized bubble sitting on the surface of the liquid there. The head, of course, gets a little bit kind of, yeah, it gets a little bit more soapy the further up that you go, and you can see that head is just fading away to be a sort of thinner foamy layer on the top. Now, one thing I'll say about this beer, the first thing that struck me about it is kind of how deep the yellow colour is in this one. So yeah, it really reminds me of a very kind of rich looking mango juice. I always like to compare the appearance of these New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that really is just what they remind me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but you don't often have to care about those latter two variables when it comes to the IPA style umbrella, if we can call it that. But what I will say about this one is it's certainly one of the kind of deeper yellows that I've come across in a New England IPA in recent times, and we have, to be fair, been reviewing quite a few of these recently from a few different countries. So yeah, the rich colour in that one I think is quite striking. But yeah, not much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer. In terms of the level of haziness in this one, it's not the soupiest and gloopiest that I've come across. But remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. That can vary from beer to beer and brewery to brewery, of course. But yeah, it's certainly got a suitable level of haze for it being an 8% New England double. But yeah, I think this one goes together really quite nicely, to be honest. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of that one. We can just see that there's a few bubbles going up toward the head there and breaking the surface. But all in all, appearance wise, this one is pretty much what you would expect from a New England hazy. So yeah, I don't think we need to say any more about the appearance of this one. Let's go on and have a little look at the aroma of this beer then, and see what we get out of it. I'm really curious about this. Oh right, nice, yeah. I'm gonna say straight away, it's giving you everything you'd expect of the style, but it's yeah, it's giving you everything you would expect of the style, but compared to what I'm used to with these styles, it is just that little bit different. You know, after you've tried so many of these, you can kind of tell slight differences between, say, European wheat and North American wheat. North American wheat for me tends to be a little bit kind of smoother, if you like, whereas European wheat's got a little bit more kind of crispness and bitiness to it. But then yeah, you've got the oats as well. American oats for me are a bit more kind of porridgey, whereas European oats are very kind of smooth and very kind of creamy. So you can actually notice this in the aroma as well. And very often I find that the New England brewed New England IPAs are a little bit more kind of yeasty and grainy, if you like, in comparison to the ones that we get in Europe and of course out here in Asia as well. So yeah, there's subtle differences in the flavours like this, and I think this is always interesting to pick up on. And with this one using Maine grown grains, I think we're going to notice some really interesting little things in this one. But yeah, as I've often said, when it comes to the New England IPA as a style, for me, when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of the beer, there's 6 elements to think about with this. So you've got the more kind of farmhousey and yeasty and the sort of rye leaning and grainy side of things. These 2 elements, as I was saying, are a little bit more common in New England brewed New England IPAs. But as the style has evolved and moved elsewhere, you've got the sort of wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bread, and also the kind of sweeter side of things coming out in this one, in these beers. So yeah, for me, this one, it does, just from the aroma, I'm going to say this one seems like it's a little bit more oaty leaning, but underneath that I do get a little touch of, I do get a little bit of I do get a wee bit of an almost kind of rye bready kind of note out of this, and some more grainy bread crusty characters. But yeah, the way that everything kind of goes together in this beer is nice. It gives you everything you'd expect of the style, that kind of bready, smooth backbone. I'm going to say as well, I know this one's got some Maine wheat in it, and I think it actually only listed 2 malt varieties. What were they again? I need to get this guy awake and we'll do that. So yeah, it says it's Mapleton Gold and Maine wheat in this one, so maybe there's not oats in this actually. That's worth pointing out. So maybe that's why this one leans toward a more kind of grainy side of things. So we can turn the screen back off. But yeah, for me, it does come across as being a bit more sort of grainy and brown bready in a sense, which I have to say I do quite like. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. So yeah, lovely kind of mix of things going on in here. So let's just break the aroma of this one down then and describe it for you that wee bit more in depth. So yeah, for me, and I'm describing this from my own point of reference, the backbone of this beer is a bit more like a kind of wholemeal brown bready bread crust. There's a little touch of woodiness to it, some cracker, as I say, quite a little bit of wholemeal brown bread for me. You can smell the fluffier white bread in there too, and the bready character in this one for me incidentally is a little bit drier than it's just more, I don't know if dry is the right word necessarily, it just feels that little bit more kind of grainy in a sense, I think is the way to describe it. So yeah, a little bit more graininess out of it, and I'm getting quite a little bit of almost crackery character, kind of like Swedish, Danish knäckebröd, something like that. I think is a good way to describe this one. But then yeah, you start to get some of the wheaty notes out of this one, and it's interesting because at the back of the nose you get a bit more bitiness out of the wheat, but overall the wheaty side of this beer is actually quite overall the wheaty side of this beer is pretty smooth in a sense. Now I think that covers the majority of the kind of bready side of the malt base. As I say, I just going by what the website said in this one, there's no oats in this, and I'm surprised that you can get this level of haze with only wheat, unless you're putting quite a bit of it in, because from what I remember it's usually about 40% of your malt base is going to be a mix of wheat and oat, and the rest of it will be barley malt in a New England IPA. But yeah, and remember of course, yeah, the style, the New England IPAs, it really started as the farmhouse IPA, so yeah, those ones had a bit of rye and kind of grain and stuff, rye and a bit more yeasty kind of character to them as well, farmhouse IPAs. But yeah, this one for me, on top of the kind of wheaty character, I'm getting a little bit of sweetness out of this one. So there's a wee touch of like Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch. There's also a little bit of like McVitie's digestive biscuit as well. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. It's just for me, the interesting thing about this one is that it's different from what I'm used to. It's certainly not the sweetest of New Englands that I've come across, and it has that little bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready crackery kind of note to it, which I do really quite like. So that gets a big thumbs up from me as well. Yeah. So I think that's everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. The yeasty side of things then, in the back of the nose, it's kind of doing a very similar thing to the malty side of the beer. So there's a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character in the at the core of it, but I do get more of a kind of fluffier white bread and quite a little bit of cracker and bread crust and things like that coming out of it too. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together on this one is quite nice. To be honest, I think that's all we can really say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. So let's go to the hoppy side of things then. So when it comes to brewing an IPA, there are 3 types of hoppings that you can do. You can do early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour or so of the wort boil. That gives you a very deep, dank green component, and it's responsible for the vast majority of your bitterness. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the latter half hour or so of your wort boil. That gives you yeah, a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma, and a very bright green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that's all about flavour and aroma, and it gives you, again, a very bright green component. So yeah, New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they're kind of softer and more juicy, if you like, whereas West Coast IPAs use all three, which is why they're deeper, danker, and sort of more oily and bitter. So yeah, with the green component in this one, I think this one might have a little touch more bitterness than the kind of standard 30 that we're used to with the New England hazies, and that's a bit more common, as I say, in the New England brewed New England IPAs, that they've got a little touch more bitterness. But yeah, the green component in this one is quite nice and bright, so primarily late addition and dry hopping. So there's a little touch of earthiness in there, and maybe a little bit of herbal character too, but yeah, quite a bit of floral aromaticity and a good little bit of grassy zestiness coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is pretty nice in that sense too. The green component adds a little bit more depth in there. Quite leafy, actually, the more that I smell of it. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, I get a little touch of peach out of this one from the Citra, but mostly it's kind of juicy mangoes from the Citra, of course. There's the softer passion fruit from the Simcoe, and a wee bit of like some apricot and things in there as well, I think too. So yeah, the mango and the Citra and the Simcoe in this one are really giving you that softer tropical note. But at the front of the nose, I think the more I smell of this one, the more it leans toward that kind of tangerine-y, orangey character that you expect of the Mosaic. That really comes out a lot more. But yeah, quite a lot of brown bready character out of this one for me, and I'm wondering if that is just the kind of Maine grown grains. But we'll see if that sort of character comes out in the flavour as well. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. That's always half the experience with whiskies and craft beers and stuff. But I think it is about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Swish, an 8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Bissell Brothers Brewing Company in Maine, in Portland, Maine, in New England, over in the US. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Let's do it. Oh yeah, that's nice. I'm going to say straight away, it really has quite a different vibe to the New Englands that I've been having from other places. And yeah, you can kind of tell when you go back to the New England brewed New England IPAs, they are actually quite different from a lot of the other ones you'll try these days, just because of how this style has evolved and things. This one is definitely more, it doesn't feel quite as creamy. It does feel like more sort of silky and smooth, in all honesty, and it feels like it's, to me at least from my point of reference, this one is a little bit more sort of brown bready leaning, but at the same time I can see the sort of flavours I'm getting out of this one are because of the wheat, and again it'll be because of that the main grain in this one, if we can call it that. You know, you can grow the same grain in different places, you know, you've got different soil profiles, different water profiles. That is of course going to affect the chemistry of the plant. Me, because I studied chemistry, I'm a bit of an ingredients nerd as well, so I love learning about things like this. But yeah, as I say, for me it's quite a brown bready and smooth New England IPA, this one. So I'm curious to see what, you know, local people from Portland would think of my opinion of this one, because obviously I've got a very different point of reference to people like this, and likewise you could swap it around and let them try the Swedish New England IPAs and the Asian ones that I've been trying recently. But that is really, really nice. Very, very smooth, silky, and very juicy leaning New England IPA, this one. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like that about this one, and really quite different, and that's what you want after 4,000 odd beer reviews. You want things that are going to test your palate a little bit. But let's do as we always do and break the flavour down and describe it for you more in depth. We'll go to the middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely kind of fresh, sort of, for me, brown bready, bread crusty character in there. When you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of woodiness just sitting further forward there. Then you've got a kind of Jacob's cream crackery, a sort of smattering of cream crackery layer sitting above that. Maybe a little bit of an almost kind of knäckebröd type quality coming out of this one too, which is quite interesting. So yeah. I like that in this, I do like that in this beer. So yeah, it does smoothen out this one into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, initially when you take it in, you get a wee bit of the grainy dryness. Then yeah, above the sort of knäckebrödy crackery layer that I was talking about, there is a layer of a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there, and you can feel that. It's quite fluffy and quite airy. The next layer up is like a more fluffy white bready character, for sure. And that sort of, that flavour kind of takes over the more that your palate adjusts to this one, I think. And it's a semi-sweet bread. It's almost, to me, it's almost got a little touch of a, dare I say, sourdoughy type bready character to it, for me. But yeah, the next layer up is the more dense, wheaty, white bready character there. As I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, you're definitely getting the smoother side of that. Yeah, you're absolutely getting the kind of smoother side of the wheat further forward on the palate with this beer, for sure. And on the back half of that middle third of your palate, there's more bitiness coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, I think that's all we need. I think that's all we can really say about the kind of bready layers in this one. Now, there isn't too much in the way of sweetness with this beer, but you are getting a little bit of that. If you go to the middle of your palate there, it's almost like a kind of oval shape there. But you can feel there's a slightly kind of biscuity, there's like a bit of McVitie's digestive biscuity character coming out of this one. But then in the dead centre of your palate, there's a bit more of a, you do have a little bit of a Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy type note coming out of this beer. So yeah, with that one, I really do quite like. Yeah, so the Werther's original butter candy butterscotch in the middle of your palate, but it's not too sweet, and then a little touch of McVitie's digestive biscuity notes coming out of it too. But I would say again, this one's a very smooth New England IPA. This, it really isn't very sweet, and it's a bit interesting because normally when I see New Englands that are this kind of yellow and rich, usually they're the kind of triples and quadruples and things, and they've got a wee touch of kind of caramel or something like that in them to you know, balance out the malty character and things like that too. So yeah, it's quite interesting to find one that's so deep in yellow, but with such a kind of smooth flavour in a sense. So yeah, that's just covered the middle third of your palate then. Let's go to the back third of your palate. As I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You can feel the brown bread in the base, the fluffier white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bready character on top. There, as I say, got a little bit of bitiness to it. The base of that back third of your palate has a little bit of a, yeah, it's got a little bit of a more, yeah, you can feel the bread crusty character is a little bit drier. Of course, you've got the Jacob's cream cracker just sitting on top of that. Then yeah, you've got the wholemeal brown bready layer, which was a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Above that, you've got the more yeah, you've got the fluffier white bready layer sitting on top of that, which again, yeah, feels a little bit lighter, taller, more airy. Then you've got the more dense wheaty white bready layer coming out of this one too, which has a little bit more bitiness to it, but again, it does feel fairly smooth, and then on top of all of that, you've got the kind of yeasty character coming out of the beer. So let's focus on that yeasty note that comes out of this one. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer for me, it's again, at its core, it's got a little bit of a more kind of sweet wholemeal brown bready character. Then as you move out from that, it feels a little bit more like a grainy wholemeal brown bread, and then yeah, you've got a sort of white bready bread crust and kind of crackery layers just around the very edge of this one, which I do really quite like. So yeah, the yeasty character adds a little bit of dryness and stuff into the aftertaste with this beer. So it's, yeah, it is more kind of, as I say, a little bit more kind of brown bready leaning, but it's got a wee bit of sweetness and yeah, a wee bit of a kind of crackery note to it for sure. So that's interesting, but definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of compresses down and it squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer then. So green component first. The back corners of your palate in this one, there's a little bit of earthiness in there, and that'll be from the mosaic. And as you move further forward, the earthiness does spread forward a wee bit, but then you get a wee bit of a woody, herbally sort of thing. And as you reach the kind of front corners of your palate, it's a little bit more sort of floral and aromatic for sure. So yeah, you've got that nice floral aromaticity in this one there, and then round the front curve of your tongue, it's just a little bit lighter and grassy and a little bit more zesty, I think, is a way we can say that too. But the green component in this one is quite smooth, but I think there's probably I get the impression it is pellets in this one because it's just got that little bit more bite to the hoppy character. So yeah, quite an old school New England IPA, this one, which is, as I say, a nice change of pace compared to what we've been having recently. So yeah, let's have a little look at the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of things just to round off. Yeah, so the border region between front and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the fluffy white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bready character on the top. The base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more of a, yeah, you can feel that kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there. The bread, yeah, you've got the bread crust, the cracker, the wholemeal brown bread, the fluffier white bread, and the smoother wheaty side of things. And then on top of that, you've got that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a little look at the fruity side of things then. And I will say this beer's kind of giving you pretty much what you expect if you would if you know these hops. So let's go to the back of that front third of your palate then. So that oily bubble with the juicy fruity esters, for me, when you first take it in, it's got a little bit of a, yeah, it's got a little bit of a more sharp, it's got a bit of a sharper peachy note, but then underneath that, yeah, you get the kind of juicy mangoes, you've got the softer kind of apricot-y, no, there's more passion fruit actually, so you've got, yeah, the citrus sits on top of the mango, you've got the sharper peach, the juicy mango, the softer passion fruit, and then yeah, as you move further forward, there's the softer apricot-y notes in there, the kind of pineapple-y notes, and then yeah, as you move further forward into the front half of the front third of your palate, it's all about the big kind of, yeah, it's all about the juicy sort of tangerine notes to this beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice in this one, and that gets a big thumbs up from me too. And I would say, yeah, when you take the beer in, you get a wee bit of the peach, but you also get quite a little bit of that tangerine orangey note coming out of it. And the more that I drink of this one, the more it leans toward the mosaic, I think. You get more of the earthiness and more of the slightly oily tangerine notes. But all in all, a really interesting beer, this one. And yeah, I think this one has been around for a couple of years. I think this recipe is at least 10 years old, so it does come across as being a little bit more sort of old school in a sense, but yeah, for me it's always interesting to go back to the New England IPA's roots with breweries like Bissell Brothers, Alchemist, Hill Farmstead, these kind of guys, and see what it's all about. So yeah, big thumbs up to Bissell Brothers for this one. Let's round off the review with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, I would say, yeah, I'd say top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. Like I said earlier, it's got a kind of smoother, more silky sort of mouthfeel rather than being really kind of creamy, as you get in a number of the more modern New England IPAs, if we can call them that. But yeah, your malt base is a little bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle. It's got a very slight sweetness on top. Your IBU count in this one is perhaps, what? Yeah, it's maybe about 25, 30 IBUs, something like that. You do get a wee bit of residual bitterness into the aftertaste, and you can kind of taste from the slight bite that it has that it's not cryo oil and things that are in here. This one is more, as I say, old school T90 pellet sort of thing. And then yeah, you've got a lovely kind of fruity juiciness to this one. A little bit of tropical fruit character sitting in behind, but mostly for me, it's the mosaic tangerine orange that kind of lingers there. So yeah, all in all, a really, really interesting beer. This one, a proper old school, more sort of grainy and brown bready leaning New England hazy IPA, this one. But I think that is just the influence of the local grains and me using my European point of reference for this one that's making me describe it that way. But yeah, all in all, lovely, lovely beer. This one certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, and it does make me very curious to try some of the other Bissell Brothers beers as well. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Swish, an 8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Bissell Brothers Brewing Company in Portland in Maine in New England and northeastern US. A brewery that you should really check out, and we'll see if we can review more of their beers at some point in the fairly near future. But until the next time, check out my social media, check out Bissell Brothers Brewing Company's social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.